Courage. Audacity, as I told you, is not a problem. He tends to love adventures. The big problem, the big challenge for sanguine people is endurance. He's prone to inconstancy, superficiality, and frivolity. He's prone to be volatile and changeable in his emotions and ideas, to feel uncomfortable when there is a disagreement, to forsake what he knows is right in order to fit in with the crowd, to please everyone, to want everyone to love him. So endurance is the fundamental challenge for sanguines. Stability is a part of endurance. Faithfulness, patience, these are parts of endurance. Endurance is about being time-tested. As I repeat, the problem with sanguines, they live in now. There is no time for them. No time. So he has a lot of difficulties to be time-tested from a biological point of view. Because he doesn't understand time. We're speaking now about biology, we're not speaking about spirituality. You have a lot of sanguine people that are endurant because they overcame this biological problem through virtue. But still, it's their fight, it's their personal fight. It's a merit for them. When you see a very endurant, faithful sanguine, you have to say, well, this guy has been working on himself. It's not the result of, it's not a product of nature. This man or that woman, serious. I know a lot of sanguines that are very serious people. They understand what time is. But it's not something that they receive by nature, it's something they have built. It's the virtue of endurance, they build it. Sanguine are fundamentally challenged by endurance. There is a very famous man, Thomas More. Thomas More, the English thinker and Lord Chancellor of King Henry VIII, is a good example of an endurance sanguine. Thomas was always smiling, joking, friendly, and communicative. Someone called him the laughing philosopher. But More was also deep, constant, and faithful. He even stands as a model of endurance for all ages. He refused to take an oath, recognizing Henry as a self-proclaimed head of a new English church of his own invention. He stood fast in his convictions and suffered martyrdom by decapitation. More was a man for all seasons. So Thomas More, he was a very sanguine person. I mean, he loved human beings. He was very friendly. He liked to have fun. He lived in the present. So biologically speaking, Thomas was a very attractive, sanguine personality. And Erasmus of Rotterdam, who was his friend, wrote beautiful stuff about him, as being Thomas being an example of friendship, an example of a pleasant and happy life and funny life. But in times of hardship, Thomas More was faithful. He stayed the course. He was incredibly endurant until the last moment of his death. And he made a joke, like any sanguine, a few seconds before being beheaded. You remember the story? This is very famous. He made a joke, because sanguines make jokes. They like fun. So he was funny until the last second, but he was so endurant. He stayed the course till the very last minute of his life. So he's a kind of model, I would say, for sanguine people. That you can be sanguine, at the same time you can be very endurant. But you have to build endurance. And Thomas built it since he was very young. We know the life of Thomas More since he was very young. He knew those things we're speaking about, and he worked very much on his character. He read all the classics. He knew everything about virtue on the theoretical level, and at the same time, he worked on it. He had plans for his life. He had real plans. And he became an incredible personality, and he's very famous. You have millions of institutes all over the world with the name of Thomas More Institute. So he's a very attractive personality because he's obviously very sanguine, very humane, like all the sanguines are. At the same time, very powerful personality, very strong character, very endurant and faithful. Self-mastery. So let's see what are the passions that sanguine people have to subdue, fight against. It's difficult for him to control his 5 external senses: seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting, smelling, and observe custody of the imagination. For him, fun tends to be a prime motivator. So sanguine people need to know those things. They have to practice self-control, but not in the same way as choleric or melancholic people do. Choleric, you remember, it's hatred, hate. These are typical temptations for choleric people. The melancholics, it's pessimism, sadness, criticism, critical spirit. For the sanguine people, the basic passions are passions that are related to the external senses. And they have to know that. They have to know that. So they have to be intelligent and prudent in order to foster and develop the virtue of self-mastery. But energizing noble passion is not a big problem. He is warm-hearted and generous on a biological level. So all those sanguine people that you know, they have no problem with energizing noble passions. Their problem is going to be stability in those noble passions. Justice. He has communication, I would say, is not a challenge for the sanguine. He tends to be friendly, outgoing, communicative, and compassionate. He tends to be a good team player and to overextend himself in trying to help others. He tends to be good at putting himself in someone else's shoes. Sanguine people are good at communication. It's easy for them to practice empathy, to listen to people. Very easy. Listen to them. To put themselves in the shoes of the others. Very easy. Very friendly, very outgoing, compassionate. Good team player. Sanguine love teams. They cannot work by themselves. They need a team. They need others. They need to have fun together. They need to be with the others. Common good. He has difficulty with the common good because he tends to be unstable in his undertakings. Well, in Africa, there is a big problem with common good. Africa, they have a lot of problem with the common good. Because people begin, but they never finish. Things are never finished. So the challenge is very much a challenge of stability. Magnanimity. In magnanimity, they have difficulties in contemplation. The sanguine tends to be superficial in his reflections. Yeah, they tend to be superficial in their reflections. At the same time, they love action, so they love adventures, so this is the good thing from that point of view in magnanimity. But he tends to be unstable in his actions. So action without stability is a big problem. So magnanimity is not the virtue that challenges the sanguine. We will see it is the virtue that challenges the sanguine is, we've said it, is the virtue of endurance. But if he builds endurance on his temperament, the sanguine can be very, very magnanimous because he likes action. He likes to move forward. He likes to dream. But he has to dream every day about the same thing. That's the challenge. Not about new things every 5 minutes. But if he gets that, if he overcomes this superficiality, if he understands what's the meaning of time, and he stops living in the present and he begins to live in the present and the future, then he can do marvelous things. From the humility point of view, the difficulty is going to be self-knowledge. He tends to be more aware of others, their feelings, than to be reflective on his, etc., than to be reflective on his own talents, shortcomings. So the sanguine, because they are not very deep, they have a tendency to know the others very well. It's typical of the sanguine to try to understand the others well, in order to communicate with them well. This is the modern society, is like this. But to try to understand yourself for a sanguine it's not a challenge, because he's not interested in it. You know, he's interested in understanding the others so that he can communicate well with the others. But understanding oneself, why? Why? I mean, our modern civilization is very much like this. Why many people like to do those personality tests, and they explain why. Because then I can communicate better. It's typical of a sanguine society. You will never see a word saying, you will understand yourself better. It's always, you will understand better the others, then you will be able to communicate with the others in a more efficient way. You see the problem. So it's very sanguine. It's a very sanguine approach. The fundamental approach must not be that one. It has to be first, you try to understand who you are, because you want to become a better human being. Most of this psychological approach to our science is very much about efficiency. It's not about self-knowledge and self-improvement. It's very much about trying to understand the others better, because then you can communicate more efficiently with the others. You follow me? We see this everywhere on all the internet pages on the topic of personality. It's about knowing the others in order to respect them, and in order also to use them a little bit, or to manipulate them very often, unfortunately. But it's not about knowing yourself in order to improve yourself. There are very few stuff like that. Very few stuff. Even if you do the Kersey test, and you read it after, when you got the result and you do it, you say, I'm good. You feel very good. I did it also, the Kersey thing. You feel very good. You feel very happy with yourself. But then after you ask yourself, and what's next? Nothing. It's not about self-improvement. It's about just you understand how you have to communicate with the others. That the others, why the others are different. But the aim of those tests is not at all self-improvement. There is nothing about self-improvement in those tests. That's why the ancient Greeks were much better. The 4 temperaments, very simple. You see the strength and weaknesses, and you see what you have to overcome through virtue. Perfect. Self-knowledge in order to improve yourself. With what we call the personality test, there is almost nothing about self-improvement. You're happy the way you are. There's no challenge of virtue. You know you're that. Social function. You have the dreamers, you have the teachers, you have the builders. These tests give you a function. And you're happy. You know, I'm a builder. Okay, then I can be useful here and there. And the guy who hires me, I will tell him, I'm the builder, so I can be useful for you here or there. It's not about self-improvement. It's again about, how can I use you? Yeah, this guy, this is the teacher. That one is the builder. It's very dangerous. So they give, the name they give you is a function. It will not help you move forward in life. It's just, how can I use you better? It's pure utilitarianism. Pure utilitarianism.